Another fight that was a big upset, not quite as big a upset, but it's still a huge upset. And in my opinion, it's your best call, and that's your former co-worker George Foreman versus Michael Mora. You had that famous line, "It happened, it happened." So talk to me about the fight. Talk to me about how you felt about George Foreman and that call. You know, it happened. It to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. That's your most famous call.
Yes, it's my most famous call. And yes, I think it can be seen as my best call. And it was not something I conjured. It was not something I planned. It was utterly and completely spontaneous. In fact, as Moorer is lying on the canvas and the count is progressing 2, 3, 4, my first thought is, why the hell didn't I dream something up to this? Why do I not have "Do you believe in miracles" in my pocket here, ready to go for this kind of a moment? How could I have been so stupid as to not consider the possibility that this would happen? And the pretext, which you may have read somewhere because I've told the story many times, of course, George was my expert commentator, and I was working with George frequently in the months leading up to the fight. And George and I had called Moorer versus Holyfield together. And several times, probably a half dozen times, I would pull George aside at ringside and I'd say, "George, how are you going to beat Moorer? He's a southpaw. He's a mover. Holyfield couldn't find him, couldn't handle him in the ring, and Holyfield has much better feet than you have." And over, George would look at me and say, "Jim, you watch. Somewhere late in the fight, he will come and stand in front of me and let me knock him out." Now, the words are unforgettable and they are precisely accurate because he said it the same way every time. He will stand in front of me and let me knock him out. And if you watch it on videotape and hear that in your head, it's freaky. It's very striking. So how did he get that to happen? Well, if you go back and watch that round, he comes out in that round and throws 2 or 3 wide sweeping left hooks. I went back and looked at videotape. He didn't throw that punch a single time in the fight prior to that moment. But as the round began, he threw 2 or 3 wide sweeping left hooks, and then he did it again about a minute into the round. And if you watch it carefully, I think it becomes clear that the purpose of those left hooks was to stop Moorer from moving to his right and get him to stand in a position where George could line up the 1-2. So he throws the sweeping left hooks, several of them, and he gets Moorer to stand in a position. He's now moved him about a foot or two to Moorer's left from where he had been before. And now that 1-2 is just a straight shot. Okay. And he did it twice. He hits him with the 1-2 once, and Moorer is stunned and he's motionless. And George steps forward and does it again. 1-2, boom. And now Moorer doesn't get up. So remember, sometime late in the fight, he will come and stand in front of me and let me knock him out. George envisioned it. He looked at tape. He studied Moorer. He knew Moorer's movements well enough, and he gulled him into a position of overconfidence. If there's one thing about George, he could take a punch. I mean, he could really take a punch. So he allowed Moorer to hit him with a lot of good, clean shots. He gave Moorer the impression that he was totally in control of the fight and could do anything he wanted to do. And he waited till the 10th round. And he used those left hooks to position him. And he lined him up with the 1-2. And he hit him twice with the same 2 shots. And that was that. It was genius. And you know, a lot of people thought, I thought for a long time, that George was not a scientific boxer, that he was a pure slugger. He was a boxer. He was a very, very thoughtful, very scientific boxer. I asked him one night, you know, what's the importance of the jab? And he would say, which jab? I said, well, what do you mean by which jab? He said, well, there are 4. And he would show me all 4 of his jabs. There was the one that was a thunder punch that was like a telephone pole coming out of a window. There was one that was a flick. There was one that he would purposely throw to the off cheek, not the cheek on the side where he was targeting it, stuff like that. And it was all about the science of boxing. George was a boxer, and he outboxed Michael Moore.
What's interesting, you mentioned that he let Moore hit him. That's what Muhammad Ali did to him. And ironically, I don't know if you know this, he wore the same trunks that he did that night when he lost to Muhammad Ali. So the fact that you mentioned...
made the right connection. That is absolutely right. Everything about the Moore fight is George's revenge for Zaire.
Wow.
Okay? He is getting back at everything that went wrong in Zaire, including his own mistakes. And so he learned. George is brilliant. He is sneaky brilliant. And he learned from Zaire, and he studied it for 15, 20 years, however long it took, to get him to the point where he had his sights on that title again, and once Moore won it, that was his opportunity. And this guy's going to be so full of himself. This guy is going to be so proud of what he's done. This guy's going to think that happened because he's great. But now I've got him. And yes, it was what Ali had done to him in Zaire. Took him a long time to really respect Ali. And I don't think that we ever got to the moment where he liked Ali, but he did gain tremendous respect for Ali over the years. And he understood that Ali had outpsyched him and that he could learn from that and outpsych somebody else.
Yeah. Boxing is poetic like that sometimes. How happy were you for a coworker? I know he's a fighter, and when you cover in events, you try to be unbiased, but I'm sure there's some like, hey, that's my friend. That's a guy I call fights with. How much of that was like, man, I'm so happy for my friend?
Well, there were a lot of things going through my mind. Okay. It happened is directly related to the things that George told me would happen. Okay. I didn't say to the audience, he told me this would happen, but that was exactly why I said it happened. It happened because I was replaying George's observations about this in my mind, all the things that he told me in the months leading up to the fight. And that was an automatic response. Oh my God, it happened. So I'm just lucky that that played out that way. And then as we're responding to it, reacting to it, I remember saying to myself, don't celebrate, because I didn't want to be too one-sided about the fact he's my buddy, he's my broadcast partner, et cetera, et cetera. This is about him, not me. This is about him, not HBO. So don't celebrate for us. Don't celebrate for me. Leave it to George to be the one to celebrate in his way. And of course, his way to celebrate was go throw himself on his knees in the corner and pray.
Okay. All right.